there. Let's bring in Dr. Muda Yusuf now. Dr. Muda Yusuf, we're looking at other options now, available for Nigeria besides the U.S. market. And how can we create, opportunities, to channel our exports so as to help our country's economy?
Well, Dr. Ken Ukoha had elaborated extensively on that, and I agree with him fully. You see, export is about competitiveness, just like any other business. And if you really want to make an impact, even if you have opportunities, just as he said, we had opportunities in AGOA, Africa Growth and Opportunities Act, since 2000, we are talking 25 years ago. It was under Bill Clinton that AGOA was put in place. And what AGOA meant was that all African countries were free to bring in their products to the United States, free of duty, no import duty at all. That was what AGOA was all about 25 years ago. As a country, we didn't have much to show. And just as Ken said, smaller countries like Mauritius, Ethiopia, some South Africa, Botswana, and all these other countries, Madagascar, took great advantage of it. We didn't take advantage because of competitiveness issues. Because exporters, like other domestic investors who are in production, are going through a lot in terms of competitiveness. And if you are not competitive, even if you have opportunities in the market, you cannot take advantage of the opportunities. So it's about competitiveness in price and competitiveness in quality. Those things are very critical and they are very fundamental. They are as well very fundamental even to all this talk about economic diversification. You can see now that it is more profitable to operate in the services sector than to operate in the production sector. Go and look at the financial statements of operators in all these different sectors. You will see a big difference. And yet we need to build this capacity for production. That is what Trump is suffering now. That's what the United States is suffering. But it's an illusion to think that you can change that overnight. You can't. It's a process, it's a journey, it's a marathon. You need to build the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, the financial infrastructure, the regulatory environment, all these bottlenecks in the exporting process. All of these things needs to be removed. Because one thing we don't lack in Nigeria is entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs that are very creative, very innovative, very energetic, very hardworking. But we need to create the environment. So that is very, very important. And this should happen across all sectors. I mean, we have been making a few efforts in the area of services, ICT, creative industry, and all of that. But when it comes to production, it's a completely different ballgame. So the government needs to do a lot to support infrastructure that supports production. That's extremely very important. That is the only thing we are asking for. Yes, we are asking the private sector to come into infrastructure and all of, but there's only so much the private sector can do in terms of infrastructure provision. Infrastructure provision is a heavy lifting that countries need to put in place to support the private sector. That is what is happening in China. China has one of the best infrastructure globally. They are one of the best logistics. So it doesn't stress the producer. That is why they are dominating the world. And if anybody thinks that this can be changed overnight, the person must be dreaming. Because they have been doing this for decades. So we need to follow that model. Secondly, we need to worry about the immediate shocks that this very thing is going to impose on us. That is why the government has set up the committee, which the ambassador referenced. We need to look at how we can go back to the drawing board and look at our 2025 budget and begin to look at how this will affect our revenue, how this will affect our foreign exchange assumptions. Because these assumptions are going to change. And if your assumptions are changing, then all your projections in terms of revenue and expenditure need to change, so that we don't create another problem down the line. I'm talking of macroeconomic problems. Problem of high deficit, problem of another high inflation rate, problem of volatility in the currency. So both the central bank and the fiscal authorities, of course, needs to be engaging very seriously now, because we need to be very proactive so that we don't have this kind of shocks. Then thirdly, it's about proper economic integration. ECOWAS has been in place since 1975. That's about 50 years. How much progress have we made? Many of the economic blocs that are doing well today, many of them came decades after we set up ECOWAS. But as we speak, and just as what Ken said, we are still struggling with proper integration framework, even at the level of ECOWAS. And if you don't get it right at the regional level, you'll have to struggle to get it right with the African Continental Free Trade Area. So we need to commit properly to the protocols. As I'm talking to you now, if you talk to exporters who are exporting within the sub-region, in spite of all this free trade thing that is on paper, in spite of all this ETA, that's trade liberalization scheme that allows you to move your product once it is registered under the scheme freely, exporters are facing a lot of problem at Benin Republic, at Togo, a lot of levies. They call it transit levy, security levy, all sorts of levies. Sometimes up to close to 5 million, 10 million per container. These things are frustrating economic integration. So the leaders in the sub-region should also commit to proper integration. And the political leaders, even on the continent, you can see that we are not moving as fast as we should move. With respect to the African Continental Free Trade Area, it's extremely very slow. Of course, we have done some symbolic exports under the Guided Trade Initiative. We exported some containers of, few containers of some goods and all of that. There was a lot of celebration around it. But after that, what has happened? So we need to commit a lot more to remove obstacles to trade within the sub-region at the continental level. And this is a political thing. We are not taking it seriously enough. And that is why there is so much violation of the protocols with impunity. There are some goods now that cannot go to Benin Republic. For instance, cement. They will tell you that, no, we don't want you to come and create problems for our industries here who are producing cement. This is in spite of the protocols that we have signed. So please, ambassadors should also help us in this, to communicate with the right authorities to ensure that at the regional level, there is better commitment to the protocols that we sign, so that the protocols are not just academic. So let me there, so that thank you.
Ambassador wants to respond to you, but I'm sure that will be after the break. But I want to stay with you quickly. You talk about immediate shocks. You talk about the effect on revenue and foreign exchange assumptions and all of that. Can you speak to us about how this situation will affect the cost of living in Nigeria, particularly for low-income households?
You see, anything that affects the exchange rate affects the cost of living. Because we're in an economy that is highly sensitive to exchange rate movements. In the last few weeks, exchange rate has moved from 1,550 and so on. It's now over 1,600. If that trajectory continues, you begin to feel the impact in the market. Because those who are in the business of either production will now begin to adjust prices. So the exchange rate sensitivity is the most important. And I must commend the CBN. The CBN has been doing a lot, at least in the past 1 year, to stabilize the exchange rate. But again, they can only go as far as our reserves can support. So we are very vulnerable, the citizens are vulnerable to exchange rates. Then if revenues are dropping, fiscal deficit is likely to increase. If fiscal deficit increases, it creates problem of inflation. So that is another effect. Those things affect the common people, because the greatest issue, challenge that the common people are facing is the cost of living, the purchasing power of the people. And exchange rate movement affects it, inflation also affects it, energy prices affects it, transportation costs affects it. And all of these things are rested on the quality of the macroeconomic environment, which these developments can create. But if you manage it well, the impact will not be so pronounced on the citizens.